What up, everybody? It's time for another celeb interview segment, and I'm excited for this one because if you're like me, huge fans of the old Showtime series Weeds, you'd be geeking out at this gentleman that I'm talking with right now, Romany Malco. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me. How are you doing, Rama?
Not bad at all. Thank you for taking the time, and also congratulations on your feature directorial debut, Tijuana Jackson: Purpose Over Prison. My
Thank you so
goodness.
much. Thank you. Thank you. I'm proud of it. I'm excited and I'm exhausted all at the same time.
This is a passion project of yours, and it premiered a couple of years ago, and it was released this past July. I got to watch it recently, very much enjoyed it. But it's fair to say that tone-wise or tonally, this is a complete departure from your acting gigs in the past, like Weeds or Think Like a Man or Almost Christmas. I mean, it's comedy, but it's also heavy drama a little bit, Tijuana Jackson. So, what made you want to write the story of Tijuana Jackson? What's the inspiration behind it? And what made you decide to take this on as your directorial debut?
The thing that made me want to write it is that I never feel satisfied with what I get from the typical Hollywood film. So look, man, if you grew up in a poor community and you've experienced a lot of trauma and you have come to a point of being able to make light of your dark side, then you can probably relate on a very real level to some of the things that just happen in the world. And so I never feel as though when I'm looking through when I'm observing like the typical studio film that those things ever get addressed. And I always wondered what would happen if you made a movie that stayed right there. It literally stayed in the thick of reality rather than having to give you all the great big Hollywood payoff and then the unrealistic, at the very beginning, they always give you like this gross injustice. But what if it was the type of gross injustice that you actually might have experienced in your life? You know what I mean? Rather than somebody coming and burning down my house and kidnapping my kids and and the government trying to discredit me. What if it was simply that the judicial system was working overtime to ensure that I lived as a third-class citizen and to ensure that the recidivism rates went up rather than down? And what if I just happened to be one of those dudes caught in that system? And that ended up being something that was much more relatable to me and people who had grown up like me. And that was the reason that I chose to write this, is because I felt like it would be very helpful to a lot of people if they could get that type of information from their media. Because whether we know it or not, media it programs us. The information that we watch and veg out to, the screens we veg out to, they make imprints on our subconscious that become societal norms, and we don't even know how. Well, that's how, right? You watch a sitcom, and a family that you like on a sitcom, they all come downstairs and eat cereal in the morning. Well, now you think you mark that as like that's the mark of a happy family, and you don't even know how you adapted that. Well, you were in theta state, sitting in front of a screen when you observed that. You weren't fully conscious, and it made an imprint on your subconscious mind, and now you're sitting there letting your kids eat cereal. And if you do the research on that, what you're really doing is you're promoting fatty liver. But that's another conversation. I'm just making the point. That media is very powerful, and I wanted to help change the orientation, and and that's how I made this film. That's why I made it. And the reason I chose to make this it was because the initial movie that I wanted to make, I have 4 screenplays that I'm proud of, but all of them are man versus institution. One is about immigration, one is about the military, one is about the prison industrial complex, and the 4th one is about the church, and it's about religion, I mean. And so the first one that I wanted to make didn't come together, but also it didn't, it would require me to be a bit more established of a director for people to be comfortable with, allowing financing and allowing me to direct something like that. It's very ambitious. And so I thought that Tijuana Jackson which was much more second nature, something I had been working on for 20 years, a character I've been doing for 20 years. I had proof of concept in the fact that I had a huge online following for this character. I had people screaming for me to start a crowdfunding campaign and that they would finance it. That that seemed to be the easier route for me as far as a directorial debut.
Yeah, and on that note, is there a specific reason for the film's mockumentary found footage style?
Yes, there is. So when I wrote the film, I wrote it the way that the dialogue is. It's very raw. It's a lot of prison slang, um, a lot of street slang, a lot of that jargon that you hear your probation officers using, and that stuff is cryptic. And so I just assumed that the kid who plays my nephew, Alcoya Brunson, I assumed that he would represent the eyes of the audience. And that's all I needed was a way to get the audience to feel like a fly on the wall. But man, I realized when I started reading it and really like table reading it, I realized that actually this kid was actually part of the dysfunction. He didn't seem like he was separate from it. He actually seemed like he was just part of the world. And so that's when I knew that the next, that what I needed to do was create another set of eyes. And I tried the mockumentary feel, and then making the documentarian someone who was from a completely different world and bringing her into that world automatically. You could feel it. You just read it, the energy was different. People who read it, you could tell that they interpreted it differently. It's like all of a sudden there was this ongoing irony, and I live for irony, but there was this now ongoing irony of this girl from this world coming from prison, coming from, from a university, and this dude coming from prison being forced to be in the same place. And I'm promising anyone who's aspiring to make film, irony is the way to go.
You mentioned financing, and I'm aware that you fundraised through Indiegogo campaign impressively. I'm a fan of independent filmmaking. But what were the challenges that presented? I mean, did you have to consistently rewrite your script so that the logistics in the story would fit within the budget?
Yeah, totally did. There was a point where I was ready to make that film for $99,000. And there was a point in that film I was ready to make it for 50,000, and so forth and so on. And so I think that it's important that, okay, I'm going to go off topic to come back on topic. A big mistake that a lot of us make is that let's say you want to start a YouTube channel. People get inspired. I want to be a YouTuber. And so they get a camera and they go, I got to just start, and they start making videos. I'll be the first person to tell you that that's the biggest mistake you can make as a YouTuber. The first thing you need to do is you need to do some research to figure out the keywords that you can incorporate into your title that aren't so competitive that you get lost in the swamp, but aren't so low that no one's actually looking for them. You have to find like the perfectly placed keywords. And it doesn't mean that you have to talk about something you don't want to talk about. No, pick your topic, but then find a way to phrase the keywords around your topic so that you can actually get placement and recommendations by YouTube to people who are searching for similar topics. Same thing goes for independent filmmaking, which is that you get inspired, you want to go sit down and write this film. Really, 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 you should probably do the research and determine what your resources are before diving into writing that high concept film. You should really evaluate what your resources are if you're planning to make this independent film. And based on what you have, and don't be like unrealistically optimistic, be realistic. Determine what your surroundings are, determine what your financial limitations are, determine what locations you can definitely use, and begin to craft your story around those things. It will save you so much headache and so much time, and it will force you to tap into creativity you didn't know you had.
Let me tell you something. I worship Regina Hall. She is just a ball of fun. I interviewed her for her other movie a few years ago, Support the Girls. And she's just absolutely wonderful and hilarious. One of the most fun I've had at the press junket. You've worked with Regina before on Think Like a Man. And was it always part of your plan to include her in this movie? And did you write the role of Cheryl for her?
100%.
Mm.
Listen, like I said, I have of maybe the 60 screenplays I've written, I've got 4 that I'm proud of. I told you what those 4 were. They're all Man versus Institution. Regina Hall is the lead in every one. She's the lead in every single one. And it's a no-brainer for me. She has this way of being incredibly street and incredibly sophisticated at the same time. I need that. I need people who can depict characters in that way. And the reason is because I like to tell universal stories from a very street perspective. And there's very few people, but also realistically, she's just a talent that I love. She's someone that I love working with. I've had one crush in Hollywood. Me and her laugh about it today. And that's Regina Hall. That's it. That, from way back, like way back. And my point being, she has the diversity. She has this way of transcending characters, and she has this way of making every environment fun. And we couldn't afford to pay for the locations that we were filming in. So we needed Regina to talk to everybody that told us we couldn't film there. And she did that excellently too. She'd be like, hey, baby. The cops would be like, y'all can't film here. She'd get out. She'd be like, let me talk to him. She'd be like, she'd come back to us and be like, y'all go ahead and film. Go ahead and film. They're going to make sure don't nobody bother us. The cops that just told us to leave are going to make sure no one bothers us. Yeah, baby, just go ahead. Don't worry about it. What did you tell? She was the bomb. But yeah, and also look, I needed some star power. Look, you need maybe one of 3 things in order to sell a film these days. It needs to be incredibly topical, right? Mm-hmm. If it's incredibly topical, like maybe you've got a documentary coming out where you had predicted that Biden was going to pick Kamala Harris to be his running mate. Maybe you have a document. Well, timing, topical, bam, we're ready to hear it. And you're talking about the strategies of his advisory board. Everybody's ready to hear that now. Then another thing you can use is controversy, conflict and controversy. If you've got that going for you, then you can use that to market your film if that's what your film contains, right? And then the other thing is star power. And so I had access to Regina Hall.
Excellent.
And that would help to, that would help incentivize investors, incentivize distributors. And sorry, I took this a little too long, but yeah.
No. I love Regina, so no worries. So let's dive deeper though into the character Tijuana, because the society probably deems him as problematic. Mm-hmm. And you even transform your physical appearance. You had that circular, shades on. You had the teeth on. But my favorite moments in the film were when Tijuana spends time with little Eric, kind of mentoring him in the only way Tijuana knows how. So there's something sweet and endearing about them just, spending time and, doing their thing together. What is the significance of putting that dynamic between those 2 characters in the story?
Well, man, I just feel like all of us have this responsibility that, our responsibility is to be there for the children in our community. You don't have to be my child. You do not have to be my child to get something to eat. You ain't got to be my child to be told, hey, you treading in hot water right now, but that was not the only reason. One of the main reasons for that dynamic was that I wanted people to understand that there's a problem in the community where you have 1 in 4 men being extracted from a very specific community. That man is being extracted from a community that's already disenfranchised. He's then being put into a prison system that has no intentions of rehabilitating anyone. And then he's learning a new way of survival due to the conditions of this prison system. His psychological, his emotional health is being neglected. There's psychological torment. There's extreme trauma that comes from that, aside from the trauma you've been raised in. And then that human being is then being placed back into the community. And whether we want to acknowledge it or not, there is a dynamic between the young men in that community and the men and the felons in that community. And sometimes, and not a lot of times, the survival methods that have been developed inside are now being applied on the outside and being taught to our younger men and women and being imposed upon our younger men and women. And maybe a corny guy like me is dating a woman with a child, and the child is for someone who's been incarcerated. And then when he gets out of prison, I have to deal with him too. You understand? It's important for us to depict those dynamics. And I know that it's not the most sensationalized thing. And I love that you said TJ is mentoring him in the best way he knows how. Well, that's what's going on in the community. That's what's going on in the world, right? Mm-hmm. So I thought those two would be an ideal vehicle for depicting that and showing the dynamics in that type of relationship, which is why when they're on the pier and he's like trying to take a picture and TJ goes, "You see me taking a picture? You see I'm trying to take a picture. Why are you smiling?" Because in TJ's institutionalized mind, you look hard in a picture, not happy. Mm.
So with movies like this, obviously you want to present a theme that's powerful. You want to call for, call to action, call for a change. Like, how do you think effective are movies like these with messages like these in today's age, do you think?
Well, I can only look, the movie's been out, it just came out. Mm-hmm. Based on not just what the LA Times is saying and ABC and all these people, based on what the people are saying. So if you look at the reviews where people can actually buy the movie, I'm not talking about the paid reviews. People pay for reviews. They pay for you to discredit movies. They pay for you to swear up and down that movies are great. No, I'm talking about places where people have to pay to leave a review. If you look at those places, what I'm seeing consistently is it's about time, and that they're incredibly inspired, and that I forced them to think about education. I forced them to think about the way in which they interpret other people from communities and backgrounds that are different from their own. And to me, we're in an era where most of us don't have to think, right? Mm-hmm. You can pretty much tune into any channel and find affirmation, not information, affirmation, right? And you can pretty much run on autopilot and get by pretty fine in the way the society is set up for you. So the fact that it's actually sparking people to question what is education and to question why they actually interpret people who are different than them in the way that they do, I think that that's like the way, to me, that's really tapping into someone, awakening someone's ability to, someone's awareness, like really waking it up. And so I hope that that's what's happening. And that's what seems to be happening based on the comments. And whenever I go live, people are just quoting the movie to me. They don't even talk to me in their own voice anymore. They just quote the movie. So I feel as though it's helping people become more aware also of what happens when you are put into the prison system and then let out of the prison system. People didn't know about restitution fees. They didn't know about this stuff. You have to pay to be on parole. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Anyway.
So for my fans at home, which digital platforms can they go watch Tijuana Jackson?
Look, Tijuana Jackson's kind of everywhere. Right now, it's doing incredibly well on iTunes. I think iTunes, it's like the number 3 comedy on iTunes and the number 17 movie overall. I think that we're in Google Play's top 20 as well. So iTunes, Apple TV, Google Play. Also, we've been rocking and maintaining really good positioning on Amazon. So Amazon Prime Video, Vudu. We've been rocking on Vudu. Thank you, Vudu. Thank you, Amazon. Thank you, iTunes. Thank you, Google Play. We're actually available on YouTube. We're available on Fandango now. It's basically on demand, so you can like literally go to DirecTV and find it. So you can find Tijuana Jackson, Purpose of a Prison everywhere, or you can just go to tijuanajackson.com. And if you go there, not only will you see all the digital outlets, but if you actually want to do like a drive-in theater experience, it will show you where you can do that as well.
All right, Romany. Before I let you go, I can't let you go without asking you this. We had Think Like a Man in 2012, Think Like a Man 2 in 2014. Once
Mhm.
this pandemic blows over, when are we gonna get Think Like a Man 3?
Keeping it 100, bro. There's no way. There's no way.
Oh.
For a number of reasons. The company that made it was at Sony. It was a guy named Clint Culpepper at Sony, and then he made it with a guy named Will Packer, who was signed to Clint Culpepper's company.
Mhm.
Well, Will Packer has since moved on to Universal, and Clint Culpepper has also moved on to lead Sony as well. And so, as a result of that, business-wise, it's almost impossible. And every single person from that movie has become a star.
Yeah.
So scheduling for Think Like a Man 2 was almost impossible. It almost didn't get done. So scheduling for a Think Like a Man 3, I doubt it will happen. It just doesn't seem feasible. It doesn't seem like the stars are aligned, and it doesn't seem like the availability of any of the celebrities would be there.
Oh, but you know what? I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed because I'm a fan.
I
Now,
thank you. I appreciate that.
folks at home, go watch Tijuana Jackson: Purpose Over Prison on all digital platforms. Romany Malco, thank you so much for talking to me, and once again, congratulations.
Hey, Ram, appreciate you, fam. I really do, man. Thank you.